In today's video, we're going to take a look at external webhooks in CloudBees CI. Are you new here? If you are, welcome. And if you are new here, you don't know who I am. My name is Darren Pope, and I'm a developer advocate for CloudBees. In a previous video, we talked about cross-team collaboration with CloudBees CI. If you haven't had a chance to watch that video yet, I highly recommend that you go and watch that to better understand what we're getting ready to discuss today. But in short, cross-team collaboration gives us the ability to be able to send an event between two jobs. That might be two jobs that are on the same controller, or it may be jobs that are on different controllers. And in fact, it can be more than one-to-one. We could have an event published from one job, and we could have a number of jobs listening for that same event. But what if you want to be able to trigger a job from outside of a controller? Well, the standard way of doing that has been to be able to use the Jenkins CLI to actually just trigger the job. But with external webhooks that's available with CloudBees CI, that is even easier to do, and that's what we're going to focus on in today's video. Here's our starting point. We have an operations center with the install suggested plugins installed, and that's it. We have two client controllers with the install suggested plugins and the plugins that were necessary for cross-team collaboration. On both of the controllers, the notification subsystem is enabled and also set to Operations Center. Now, if that doesn't make any sense to you, go and watch the video about cross-team collaboration. We've also got two jobs. On Client Controller 1, we have a jsonPub job. And on Client Controller 2, we have a jsonSub job. Here we're looking at the documentation for external webhooks, or also known as external HTTP endpoints. In order for this to work, we don't have to install anything specific to cross-team collaboration on our Operations Center, but we do have a couple of plugins that will need to be installed. Now, what does this give us the ability to do? We've sort of leaned into it just a little bit. External webhooks work with cross-team collaboration. So just like how we were able to send events from one job to another by doing a publish event, by installing these plugins and making the webhooks available, or these external HTTP endpoints available on the Operations Center, we can send in messages from the outside world, events from the outside world, and be able to consume them on the jobs that are running on our controllers that are connected to the Operations Center. This picture shows us the basic flow of the events. In this picture, this is showing a person doing a git push. Let's assume that's going to GitHub. GitHub would send a webhook event down to our webhook endpoint, which is on the Operations Center. That webhook accepts the event, drops it on the event router. We saw this event router on the picture for cross-team collaboration. And then that event is sent on down. And then in this case, on the web services team controller, it's waiting for that event to come in and a job gets triggered because it's listening for that event. So this is the basic flow. Much like cross-team collaboration, we have a publisher that is sending an event. In this case, the event is coming from the outside world. And then our jobs inside of our controllers are listening for those events. So what are the three plugins that we need to use? Two of these should look familiar. The first two here listed are Notification API and Operations Center Notification. Both of these plugins are required. In fact, all three of these plugins are required. So these two we've seen before with cross-team collaboration. The third plugin gives us the ability to manage the webhooks for our environment. In order to configure external webhooks, we have to follow the same process as we did for cross-team collaboration. First, we'll need to enable the notification subsystem on the Operations Center and make the router for it the Operations Center. Once that is all set up, then what we'll do is we will create endpoints to be used. And we'll go through all that live in just a few minutes. Now, out of the box, there are 6 basic webhook endpoints that are available. As you can see here, there are 2 for Bitbucket, 1 for Docker Hub, 1 for GitHub, 1 for Nexus 3. But the one that we're going to be focusing on in today's video is the custom JSON webhook. And the reason why we're focusing on this is this gives you the ability to send events from any system that you may want. Maybe you want to create a Slack or a Microsoft Teams type chat to where you could send a message from that interface. Or maybe you've got a Python script that you've written and you just want to send an event. Or it could be any number of things. All that we're going to be doing is creating a JSON string, and we're going to be posting that string to the endpoint. And in fact, in our example today, we're going to be using curl. So you should be able to extend that to whatever way that you want to do. So let's go ahead and flip over to our Operations Center. We are going to log in. So the first thing that we're going to need to do is install the plugins. So we'll go to Manage Plugins. We'll go to Available. And in the search, I'm going to type notification, or I didn't spell it all the way out, but notify with the I. And it filters down to external notification plugin, notification API, Operations Center notification. I'm going to go ahead and do a download now and install after restart. We got everything set there, and let's go ahead and do the restart. Okay, now we're back. We'll go ahead and log back in. Once we are logged in, we will go over to Manage Jenkins on the Operations Center. And now under System Configuration, we have Configure Notification. We are going to enable it and Operations Center messaging for the router. Click on Save. Now, before we do anything else with the webhooks, let's go back over and verify that our controllers are set up the way that we want. So CM1, Manage Jenkins, Configure Notification. It's enabled in Operations Center messaging. That's good. There's our jsonPub. Go back over here to CM2. I've got Manage Jenkins, Configure Notification, enabled, Operations Center. That's all good. I have my jsonSub. Just one more time, we can see right now that it is, if you look up in the upper right-hand corner, 3:17. I'm off by 5 hours. Oh, also we are running 263.2.3. Just in case anything is a little different, keep that in mind. Let's go back over to CM1. Let's run the pub job. So the pub job has been run. Let's go take a look at CM2. We're really looking at this because what's going to happen is we are going to send an event from the command line to the Operations Center, and we expect this JSonSub job to fire off, just like what it did here in number 4, which 8:11, I'm 5 hours off. So, and here's the message that we just sent across. Again, if you've watched the video from cross-team collaboration, this is the exact same pipeline that we used then. So I have hello and blue. Okay. So now we verified our sub job is working correctly. Now what we need to do is set up the webhook endpoint. So let's go do that. So you will see under System Configuration this Manage Notification Webhook HTTP Endpoints. Let's take a look at it. The screen is pretty straightforward. Let's create a new endpoint. There are, again, 6 different options Today we are using custom JSON webhook. Let's give it a webhook name of test webhook. That is just a name. You can name it anything you want. It is not used other than a visual for you to see what it is. Now let's set up the message. You could choose to have nothing signed. And you would be required at that point, if you wanted to be able to post a message to this operations center, you would have to put in an allow list of IP addresses, or so I could put in an IP address of that, or I could put in put in a CIDR range. I can do any of those things. It is one per line. You could also do IPv6 just as well. Again, it's a list of IPv4 and IPv6, one per line. Either as as long as it's a valid address, it is accepted. Either if it's just an IP address, to be explicit, a 32, or I could put it in a subnet, whatever it is. But because I want to be able to not worry about providing an IP address, because I'm inside four walls, I could force an allow list, and that would be best from a security practices perspective. But for our example today, I'm going to stick with a SHA-256 signature validation. So what that means is when we do a curl, we're going to pass in a header. And that header, in our case, is going to be all lowercase x-hub-signature. Now, we need to provide a secret. So in our case, we are going to type secret. It will make our calculation in a few minutes much easier. You'll see why. But in reality, you would probably want to generate your own random secret, or we have a helper right here that will generate a secret for you. Now, this is plain text from this visualization. So this is not secret hashed into this. This is just a random generator. So this would be the string that we will use when we are actually doing the signature creation for the SHA-256. But just to make it simple, we are going to use secret. For now, I am not going to be concerned about defining an allow list. I just want it to be simple. So let's recap this here real quick. We give it a name. We select custom JSON webhook. We set the signature type to SHA-256. You could choose what you want, but 256 is what I'm going to use. We're going to use a header of X-Hub signature, and our secret is going to be secret. Okay, cool. Bottom left-hand corner, click on Save Webhook. Now let's take a look at what this overview screen looks like now. We have the name of test webhook. We have the endpoint URL. The last event is showing as NA because we have not sent an event yet. The status, again, because there has been no event set. The format, and then we can click on details. And this gives us some more information about this endpoint. And then also a big red delete button. Notice what does not exist here. There is obviously a create, there's a view, and a delete. However, there is no edit. So if you forget what your secret is, you will need to create a new endpoint. Let me repeat that. If you forget what your secret is, you will not be able to edit this one and be able to retain this endpoint URL. You will have to create a new endpoint that has a new secret for you. Very important thing to remember. Okay, so let's go back and figure out what we need to do from the message perspective. If we take a look at I'm in the wrong place, there we go. If we go back over to our CM1 job, go to jsonPub, configure, Here, we were passing in a JSON string of event hello and color blue. I'm going to copy that. Now, you can choose how you want to do your string magic to turn it into the header. I'm actually using freeformatter.com because it has an HMAC generator. So if you're using Python, Java, you could do it all through code. But for now, just so you can see what we're doing, we're going to put the string here for event hello color blue. My secret key is secret. And my algorithm is SHA-256. So if I compute the HMAC, we get a string that is A9E4. I want you to take a look at something though. If for some reason I decided, you know what, I don't like that format. I want to do more of a pretty format. And I do this compute before we punch the button on it. Remember that it's A9E4. If I do a compute HMAC now, it's now 2dBC. So the format of the string that you're going to submit has to match exactly. Otherwise, when that comparison happens for the signature, it may not match. So the recommendation is just make this a flat JSON string, and that way you can quickly do that calculation for the HMAC 256, at least in this case. So let's go back and compute this HMAC again, and there's my value. Okay. Now what do we do? Well, now we're ready to go ahead and set up our curl line to be able to post back to our endpoint. So let's go to Manage Jenkins Controllers, go to Webhooks. So here is our endpoint. And let me pull this up. Okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to do curl-x post. This is a requirement. It also requires a content type header of application JSON, X hub signature of that. And now let me grab the endpoint. Now, before you start yelling at your screen, I'm actually doing this on purpose. Notice I do not have the data to submit. I have the header that is associated to the data, but I want you to see what happens when we do a post and we mess something up. If we submit that, we receive a 403. And the reason why will become apparent in just a moment. Let's refresh this. The last event came in at 2021. The status was a 403. And if you hover over the status, it will give you what the answer is, but eventually that status sort of goes away. The easier way to see this is click on Details, and that will give you the details of the last received message. So the last event was, again, at 2021. The HMAC signature was not valid. It expected the digest type, but it received this A9E4, which is what we did send over, but because we did not send over a body that had our JSON content in it, we received a 403 because the header for XHub signature did not match the body that was sent in, which the body was empty. Okay, so here's how we're going to fix that. We are going to create a file named test.json. We are going to grab, let me find my, so here is my JSON string. I'm making sure I don't have any trailing spaces or anything else weird going on. That looks good. And we're going to go back up to the curl line. And the way we can do this, we could have done it in line with curl, but I'm going to do it this way. So now what we have is we have our post, we have our content type header, we have our HMAC header, we have our data, and then our endpoint. Let's hit enter. Since we did not receive a response, that means it was accepted. So if we come back over here to our test webhook, we can see the last status was 200. It says success. If we click on the details, it says the same thing. Now, what that means is we can go over to CM2. We can see it's 324 right now. And we can see that we had an event run at 824. Now, before we take a look at the output of the 824, let's go back over and take a look at the one that we ran from the jsonPub job to the jsonSub job. In this case, it was triggered by event, and the full message received was _class, short description. Keep this in mind for just a second. Let's go over and take a look at the job 5 run. In fact, I'm just going to be now let's take a look at what happened. We still get our class, we get our short description, but notice we did not receive the whole source section that was inside of the event. So this is an indicator that since there is no source, this message that was received came from an external webhook. Source will always be available on any jobs from within using cross-team collaboration. But from an external webhook perspective, that source, since it is not known where it came from, meaning since there is no source-specific information here, we know that it was an external webhook that published this event. So we can see here, we have event hello, color blue, and we still get the data that we expected from the event. And that's it. External webhooks is built on top of cross-team collaboration. It accepts, out of the box, 6 different types of webhooks. The one that we looked at today was custom JSON webhook. We were able to send in a JSON message from the outside using curl, and our jsonSub job accepted that message and processed the job just as if it was like the jsonPub job. If you have any other questions about external webhooks, cross-team collaboration, or anything else CloudBees CI, you can reach out to us on Twitter at CloudBeesDevs. Or you can reach out to me directly at Darren Pope. If this video was helpful for you today, do you mind? Give us a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed to CloudBees TV yet, why not? Go ahead right now, click on that subscribe button, and then ring that bell, and you'll be notified anytime there is a new video on CloudBees TV. Thanks for joining us today, and we will see you in the next video.